Introduction to Poetry, Poetic Terms. Poetic terms, like with novels, poems also have a set of terms and devices that we use to describe how poems are written. The basic unit of a poem is called a stanza or verse. Stanza are the verses of a poem, the sets of lines grouped together. 4 lines together is a quatrain, 3 lines is a tercet, 2 is a couplet, and so on. The quatrain is the most common form in English poems, and the famous Shakespearean sonnet is written in 14 lines, 3 quatrains, and a rhyming couplet. A rhyming couplet is 2 lines paired together that have end rhyme, that is, a vowel sound that's the same at the end of the line. Rhyme is when the vowel sounds A, E, I, O, or U of 2 words match. For example, day and ray, light and bite, you and two, red and dead. Half rhyme is when the vowel sounds are close but not exactly the same. Day and die, I in symmetry, as in William Blake's poem, The Tiger. A sonnet is the classic form started in Italy. There are actually 2 types. Actually, there are 3, but we only need to worry about 2. There's the Italian style made famous by Petrarch, the Petrarchan sonnet, and the English style made famous by Shakespeare. All sonnets are 14 lines, and a lot of them are about love, but not all of them. Modern poets writing now also use this form, and their sonnets tend to be less romantic than the old school ones. Shakespearean sonnets are 14 lines long, have a rhyming couplet at the end, and follow a complex rhyme scheme that looks like this: A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, G. That makes 4 quatrains, a stanza of 4 lines, and a rhyming couplet, a pair of rhymed lines at the end, for a total of 14 lines. The Italian style has 8 lines together called an octave and 6 lines together called a sestet. The octave rhyme scheme is A, B, B, A, B, B, A, not ABBA, ABBA. This is not Swedish pop music that we're talking about. But the sestet can have a variety of patterns. If you study Petrarchan sonnets at some point, you will definitely go over those different possibilities in class. Here is Sonnet 18 by William Shakespeare. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometimes declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou ought'st. Nor shall death brag thou wanderedst in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou grow'st. So as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. C and thee mark the end of the rhyming couplet. Day and May are the A rhymes, temperate and date are the B rhymes. As you can see, temperate and date are actually a half rhyme. In Shakespeare's time, the pronunciation might have been closer to a full rhyme, but pronunciation changes over time, of course, so we don't speak exactly the same type of English Shakespeare did, even though Shakespearean English is considered modern English. More Shakespeare. Shakespeare's plays are written in blank verse, and the speeches in particular are lines written with a specific rhyme and meter called iambic pentameter. This pattern is about syllable stress. Most formal English poetry, that is, poems in English written in specific forms, like sonnets, depend on stressed and unstressed syllables in the lines to determine the rhythm. This can be a little difficult to understand if you are not used to it. So for better, deeper understanding of this topic and good information on this topic, please consult the following video. Click the link that's there. It's a TED Ed talk and explains this idea very, very well. And it has pirates. Seriously, pirates. To explain rhyme scheme. It's awesome and fun. And easy to understand. Rhythm and meter. Rhythm in English poetry is about sound and stress. When there is a formal rhythm that can be counted, it is called meter. The most common meter in English is Shakespeare's iambic pentameter. It even occurs when we use ordinary sentences sometimes, like in the TED video, with the sentence, I am a pirate with a wooden leg. One unstressed syllable, followed by a stressed one, in a pair with 5 lines per pair. I am a pirate with a wooden leg. A lot of modern poetry is written in free verse, which depends on line style, sounds, and devices such as assonance and alliteration to create the form, rhythm, and style of the poem. More poetic terms. Alliteration, when the beginning sounds of words are used close together in one line or paragraph, for example, and are the same, it's called alliteration. For example, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. The P sound is alliterated. Then there's assonance, sounds produced by the same vowels inside words in a line of poetry or in a few sentences in a paragraph. For example, distinctly I remember, it was in the bleak December, and the separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Remember, ember, December. That ember sound is what's repeated, and that's the assonance. Consonance is matching consonant sounds in words, kind of like a rhyme but with non-vowels, and this is usually not at the beginning, like alliteration, but at the end or in the middle. Okay, they're different than alliteration and assonance. All's well that ends well. The L sound is consonant. That's that repeated consonant sound. More poetic terms. Of course, we have symbols when an object in a poem or story represents an idea or concept greater than that object itself, the same as in novels. For example, the moon can represent women and fertility, horses can represent power or freedom, and poets play with these, and critics often assign meaning to these objects in poems when they are repeated or emphasized. Sometimes there's disagreement between poets and critics about this, but hey, what else are you going to write your essay on? Might as well be symbols. Line breaks. This is where the line of poetry ends. It may or may not be the end of a grammatical sentence, as in these end-stop lines. I do it so it feels like hell. I do it so it feels real. I guess you could say I've a call. Each line here, which is from Lady Lazarus by Sylvia Plath, is one sentence. A grammatical sentence, it's in one unit, but they work together in a tercet of poetry, actually 3-line verse. There's a different name for sentences that run over several lines of poetry. End-stop lines complete a grammatical sentence, as in the previous example, and enjambment is the technique used when the grammatical sentence flows into the next line of poetry or over several lines of poetry. Sometimes this results in the line having two meanings, one meaning in the context of the whole sentence and one meaning in the context of the part of the sentence that occupies one line, as in this Margaret Atwood poem. The things we say are true, it is our crooked aims, our choices turned them criminal. The things we say are true is the first kind of clause in this stanza, and the things we say are can be isolated to mean the things we say exist. So you can look for those kinds of different meanings in poems as well, and sometimes it takes one or two readings of the poem to really see how those work. And if you look at the presentation on reading poems, you'll see how to approach reading poems. And it's not as hard as you think. They're just real little stories after all. Of course, there are more poetic techniques to discuss, but these are the basic ones that will help you read and understand the poems you will come across in Year 9 and Year 10 here. There's a separate presentation on reading techniques for poems and how not to be intimidated by them. Do not worry. Reading poems can be as good of an experience as listening to good music. Don't forget, Bob Dylan, who is a known musician, far more famous as a musician than a poet, won the Nobel Prize for Literature. So I guess that means that pop songs count as poems. Enjoy!